Zoom. Hey, yay, problem solved. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, so it was not recording that whole time. You may need to start over. Sorry, everybody.
No, that is fine. All right. All right. So the overview, and then we're going to be highlighting some recent efforts, and then the CDFW permitting overview process. Again, we have experts from CDFW, a variety of experts, and I'm going to take the time right now. If you could please just stand up and give a very brief overview. I'm going to start with our folks that are staff in the board chambers, and then we'll go ahead and shuffle it over to Zoom. So we have water resources staff in Mitchell Breedlove, one of our program coordinators in the board chambers. We also have Jordan Beaton, another program coordinator on the Zoom room, and then Angela DePalma Dow, our invasive species program coordinator, who we'll be hearing from in a moment in the Zoom room. And then in the board chambers with CDFW, we have Felipe, we have Ben, we have other Ben, and then please remind me of your name again. Nathan. Great. And then folks from CDFW on the Zoom room, do you mind just introducing yourself? We'll start with Jen. I know I saw Jen.
Right. Hey, good evening, everybody. Jennifer Garcia. I'm the environmental program manager out of our Northern Region office, North Central Region office. I'm also our tribal liaison and working with timber and water and interpretive services in our campus program. Nice to be here.
Thank you, Jen. Any other CDFW friends in the Zoom room? No? All right.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Go
My
ahead.
name is Amy Braddock, and I am with CDFW. I generally work on the MOUs for the Hitch.
Great. Thank you, Amy.
And this is Dylan Wood from CDFW. I'm the Habitat Conservation Program Supervisor for Lake County.
Awesome. Thank you, Dylan. And I think that's it. Do we want to, some of our tribal leaders, do you want to introduce yourself? No pressure if not. Thank you. Great, thank you. Do we have any tribal leaders in our Zoom? If so, please feel free to introduce yourselves. All right. Hearing none. All right, thank you all for being here. All right, so a very brief overview of the Lake County Watershed Protection District. So we serve many hats. We have a small but mighty team. We oftentimes interchange between Lake County Water Resources and Lake County Watershed Protection District. It's just a legislative aspect, so same department. But basically what we do is we're tasked with the protection and preservation of Clear Lake, the entire watershed, including groundwater, surface water, etc. And we do this by advocating as stewards of Lake County in our Clear Lake watershed. So some of the specific projects that relate to Hitch, because that's what we are keeping this discussion focused on, is floodplain management. We oversee over 10 miles of levees that were constructed by the Army Corps of Engineer and the Upper Lake community. So we are tasked with maintaining that levee system. And then, as you can see on the bottom, we do have that highlighted specifically on this. On top of that, we also do groundwater monitoring. We are overseeing the Middle Creek Restoration Project, which once completed, a lot of excitement for that. It will increase the habitat for our Clear Lake Hitch friends. We do water quality monitoring. We work very closely with Sarah and her team as it relates to water quality monitoring on our lake. We do invasive species management. We oversee Highland Springs. So we do lots of fun stuff throughout the county. Our involvement as it relates specifically to the work that CDFW and our tribal communities have been doing, specific to the project that we're going to be highlighting here in a moment from CDFW, the stream clearing project, is we assisted with the rights of entry. So one of the issues that we've encountered is the majority of the creeks in the lake do fall on private property. So we can't just go out there and do that maintenance. We have to get approval and authorization from those landowners that have the parcels that fall into the creek. So getting those rights of entry is a first big step. The county, based off of the conversation that we recently had, the county is working on building a policy and looking at any sort of ordinance that we can develop or enhance related to our code enforcement officer as it relates to nuisances. So for example, as vegetation builds up in the creek based from fallen debris on your private property, we're looking at ways that we can work alongside code enforcement to follow up with those landowners, help them get rid of some of that vegetation, and most importantly, prevent that from happening in the first place using county ordinances. So that's something that's really exciting that is in the early stages of doing, and that of course that will go before the Board of Supervisors. I'm going to be looping Sarah into that and utilizing her expertise to help us with drafting up those ordinances. We're also helping with the brush and trash removal. Jen is going to speak about how much trash and vegetation actually was cleared in these creeks. You look at it from the land side and it's a lot, but then when you actually get down to the bottom of it, you have these big piles of debris. Of course, we can't just leave that there, so we were able to utilize some contracted crews from PG&E, get some chippers out there, and actually remove that vegetation to completely get it out of the way, because we don't want to increase flood risk, because we are going into our wet weather season. And then, of course, public outreach, so hosting open houses and town halls of this nature, bringing these items before the Board of Supervisors. Again, I highlighted some of our specific projects as well. So we have the Middle Creek Restoration Project, which is a large wetland restoration project that will be taking place in our Upper Lake community. We are in the early stages of that in terms of parcel acquisition. So we've acquired the majority of the parcels, and then next step eventually will to do the cultural analysis, environmental analysis. That project is overseen by the Army Corps of Engineers, and that has been a long-going project for the past 20 or so years. And we recently were able to get awarded funds from Caltrans to do a Clover Creek restoration project. So that is restoring that a portion of Clover Creek channel. And I'll let Angela speak upon this when it's her time to share with the audience what she has to share. She wants to highlight a little bit more in detail the Clover Creek project, but basically restoring that channel, planting some native vegetation, and then removing a lot of that vegetation that's out. How we got here, again, so our tribal communities have been a big lead, and if not one of the biggest leads in terms of getting the attention that it needs. We've had a lot of great collaboration between different agencies, whether it be tribal communities, state agencies, us at the local level as well. So the Clear Lake Hitch was listed under the California Endangered Species Act, also known as CESA. You may hear the acronym throughout this presentation. And then we do have the CFW, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, lake and streambed alteration regulations were introduced shortly after that. And then following that, Lake County supervisors did vote unanimously to declare an emergency to the Clear Lake Hitch. And then the draft emergency information order regulations from the State Water Resource Control Board. And then, of course, why we are also here is storms do cause debris within the creek. So there is a lot of overlap. We acknowledge there has been a lot of momentum. So that's another reason why we wanted to have this open house, was to be able to provide an avenue for folks to come ask us questions, get more guidance. But again, today's discussion is going to be specifically about the CDFW permitting process and how you can get involved and help expand in terms of stream clearing on your private property or neighbor's property as well. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Angela to do a quick overview about another opportunity that you guys can get involved. So Angela DePalma-Dow, please take it away.
Hi, can you guys hear me now? Okay.
Yes, we can. Thank
And
you.
you can see me. I'm on video. Okay, great. Thanks. So I am going to talk about an opportunity. I have a few slides here. This is a project I've been working on for a couple of years with our partners at the USDA NRCS, or Natural Resource Conservation Service. We also have partners at the Lake County Farm Bureau, and this is an opportunity for funding assistance for anybody in the Clear Lake watershed that has farm or ag properties that want to reduce runoff or pollution from your farm or forest. And this is relevant for this presentation today because there are funding available for stream clearing and stream stabilization. Next slide, please. So this is the program. It's the National Water Quality Initiative. And again, like I said, it's through Natural Resource Conservation Service, and it really focuses on source water protection, particularly Clear Lake, which is a drinking water source for about 60% of the county. There was 2 phases for this. The first phase was called a pre-implementation planning, where we developed a source water assessment plan. And then phase 2, which is where we're at now, which is implementation. And this includes voluntary on-farm or on-forest conservation investments and targeted conservation practices that focus mostly on reductions in nutrients and sediments, but anything that has a general water quality improvement and keeps materials on the landscape as opposed to running down in the creek and out to the lake are applicable and eligible. So the phase 1 watershed assessment plan was completed in conjunction with the sanitary sewer update for drinking water purveyors, and that is available on our website at this link. And it applies to the Clear Lake watershed, which is outlined here in blue. So not the entire Upper Creek watershed, but just the area of land that flows directly into Clear Lake. Next slide, please. And this is our website. So if you want to get a hold of that plan, what it says, particularly as the sanitary survey, you can go to Lake County Water Resource Department, and then you want to go to the program or the tab that says Clear Lake, and the very last tab says Clear Lake Water Quality. Click, please. Next. Okay, here is when you scroll down that page, this is what you'll see under water quality programs, descriptions, links, and it'll be the Clear Lake Source Watershed Assessment Plan. And then the actual plan or this and the sanitary survey, they're both together, is this link right here in blue. Click, please. And this is what it looks like. It's pretty hefty. It has some appendices, but this has a lot of data compiled about lake water quality and impacts to drinking water treatment, and also the sources of nutrients and sources of pollution, contaminants, and sediments runoff from the watershed that are impacting lake water quality. If you have any questions or comments about this, please look at it online and let me know. Okay, next slide, please. So back to the funding resources that are available if you have a farm or ag property. So ask yourself these questions. Click, please. Do you have agricultural, small farm, or forest property within the Clear Lake watershed? And do you want financial or technical help with installation of management measures that improve water quality? They could protect Hitch. They could have recharge groundwater or monitoring groundwater, secure livestock, repair stream crossings, or improve land management practices. If any of this sounds fun and interesting and something that you need on your forest or small farm, and you said yes to both of these questions, then you are eligible for this program. Click, please. What we need though right now is interested property owners. I think I've got about 6 people. One of them was me and NRCS office for testing. And so we really want interested property owners to complete the survey. And here's the link right here. And then you could also use your phone. If you put it right now on the screen and go to your QR code reader, you can use that QR code that's on the screen there, and it'll bring the survey up on your phone. You can answer it in like a couple minutes. And what that'll do is that'll put your information into a little spreadsheet, and then our NRCS office can reach out to you and do the full application. Click, please. And these are the general steps for this program. So you'll do the survey, then NRCS office will contact you and conduct a site visit. And in fact, I'm going out with the NRCS office later this week to properties out on Coal Creek, which has a lot of flooding. There's ag there. There's a little bit of forest land, and it's important tributary for Hitch. And so we're going to try to be working through this program to get some property owners some help for leaving some of these things while improving water quality. Then the property owner will fill out a full application and work with the NRCS office to do that. And then once the project's approved, which it is because we have a plan now with NRCS, it'll go through the contracting negotiation for approved contractors to do the work. This is on the NRCS office side with communication with the property owner. The burden of all of this is not falling on the property owner. And then there's some preliminary planning, maybe some visits by some engineers if any that's needed, and then implementation phase. And then there's some maintenance in there that's included as part of the agreement. And then you basically enjoy the benefits of this project. And we say that it's help financial funding because it's partial payment for this, which could mean a lot if you're trying to put in a new culvert for a stream crossing or do some stream bed stabilization to prevent flooding and erosion. That could be pretty expensive. But if you can get a 50 or 75% cost taken care of by NRCS, that's a big help for some of these property owners. Next slide, please. So what will this program help pay for? Here is a general list, even though there is a whole bunch more out there of things that this program can pay for. So if you have an ag property or a forest property, even a small farm, if you have a couple goats, a couple pear trees, maybe some walnut trees, and you're near a creek and you want something to install some things to help with water quality, there's a long list of things that this program can help pay for. I bolded some of the items here that are relevant to this presentation for stream clearing. So whether you just had your adjacent stream cleared by the CCC crew and CDFW recently, or it's going to be planned to be cleared, these are some things that might also help with maintenance for that, such as clearing and snagging, which is actually the removal of vegetation or trash or large debris, channel bed stabilization, so making sure the integrity of the stream is maintained. Also fences to prevent escaped livestock. The last thing we want to do is repair all these streams for Hitch and then livestock go and trample through everything because some of the fencing is broken. And so that's a really easy one that NRCS could pay for fence repairs. Open channels, making sure flow is maintained, both for flood drainage help, but also to prevent backups and then blowouts, which would cause erosion. Thank you. Sorry, I'm finishing up. And then stream bank shoreline protection is an obvious one. Tree and shrub establishment for native plants, and then wetland wildlife habitat management. If you have an area on your property and you have a forest and maybe it floods all the time and you want to make sure that it's maintained as a habitat that's beneficial for wildlife, this would be a way that you could help pay for some of that. So again, there's a huge long list. The link for this list of these practices is in the survey too. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you for letting me be part of the presentation. Again, here's the survey link. Here is the QR code. You guys can click it on your phone or take a screenshot of this. I also have flyers, hard copy flyers with all this information on it downstairs at the board chambers. And if you have any questions, you can call any of the phone numbers listed here for the NRCS office. That'd be Erica Lundquist, is the conservationist there right now. Lake County Farm Bureau, Rebecca's really happy to answer some questions and help some folks out with this program. And then also myself, Angela at Water Resources. And again, thank you so much for having me present this project. Please enroll. Even if you don't know if you're eligible, we'll help you. We'll do a site visit. We want to get more folks involved. The last thing I'll say about this is a project that won't ever terminate as long as the funding's there for USDA. Once we have the plan, this funding opportunity is available basically forever, and there's no ceiling on how much fund there is as long as the projects continuously help improve water quality and prevent nutrients and sediments from going into the lake. So thank you very much. I'm done.
Great. Thank you, Angela. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to CDFW. Felipe Laluz is going to start us off.
Great. Thank you, Marina. Once again, I'm Felipe Laluz. I'm a senior environmental scientist with CDFW, and I coordinate the Clear Lake Hitch Task Force. I'm going to give you a brief overview, and then I'm going to hand it over to my colleague here, Ben Huffer, to go into some of the details about the permitting process, what needs a permit, and what you can do without a permit. And he'll also cover some of the work that the California Conservation Corps has done in collaboration with us and the county. What we really want you to take home today, and you'll hear the term willing property owners quite frequently, as Angela also alluded to, we really want to empower you to maintain your streams. And this is of course going to benefit the Hitch, but also have the extra benefit of preventing flooding. And we all saw this year, water will go everywhere and the Hitch are going to go where the water is. So it's, killing two birds with one stone. Next slide, please. Previous slide. So just a species overview. The Clear Lake Hitch is a subspecies of the Sacramento Hitch. This subspecies is endemic to Lake County. They don't occur anywhere else in the world. They're culturally important in that they used to occur in such abundance that they supported many people in the region as a primary food source. They're also ecologically important in that they're a vital part of the food web, feeding low on the trophic level, and an important food source, not only for people, but for mammals and birds that live on these fish. We at the department are beginning to think of native fishes as a bioindicator, in that the overall trends of these fish are an indicator of the habitat that supports them and ultimately the habitat that supports all of us. These fish have a 5 to 6 year lifespan, assuming that they don't succumb to predation or some other source of mortality. And this is important in that we're seeing these intense prolonged droughts. So a hitch has, 4 to 5 years to contribute to the population and replace itself. And we want to make sure that these fish that have this sort of boom and bust populations dynamic, we want to maximize the boom in the boom years, like we see in 2023, a good wet year where we could see a lot of fish produce and survive. We want enough fish to be able to survive and have a healthy population during the lean years, which in this drought that we just saw and a previous drought in 2013 through 2016. All life stages of this fish use the tributaries, with the adults swimming up, typically in late winter, early spring, spawning. The resulting larvae and juveniles rear and grow in the stream and eventually move out. And I have here February through June, though they have been observed in the tributaries much longer, well into summer. And this year, some of our biologists that we partner with at Robinson Rancheria have been tracking isolated pools in which hitch have persisted throughout the summer. So if there's enough water to go around, these hitch can utilize these smaller habitats and survive. And as Marina mentioned, they were listed as threatened under the California Endangered Species Act in 2014. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about some of the barriers. There are many challenges facing the hitch, but we're here specifically to talk about some of the challenges they face in migration. Of course, permanent barriers that are fairly obvious. We can all picture a big dam that's an obvious barrier. These can be dams or infrastructure. This picture to the right is Manning Creek. This is a small road that's about 2 feet high. This was a passage barrier for hitch. They don't have the jumping capability or swimming capability of salmon, so fairly benign structures within the creek can be a barrier to them. Our fish passage crew developed this little fish ladder, and apparently it was effective. Again, here's a willing property owner that allowed us to come in and install this fish ladder. So the hitch were able to pass this, showed up at the next property, and that property owner had a similar situation, a road that was blocking the creek. Again, they contacted us, allowed us to come in and remove that road, and they will be replacing it with a bridge the hitch will be able to swim under. Again, only able to do this with willing property owners. Then there are other flow-related barriers. So here in the middle, we have Adobe Creek. This is in March of 2022, so right in the middle of what we think would be, the migration period. And these dry stream beds are a less obvious passage barrier. So of course, hitch cannot pass this, and any fish that made it up past this point when the water level dropped would either be stranded or desiccated. And then we have small barriers that we're hoping to empower you all to take care of yourselves or work with us to take care of, which are debris and vegetation. And Ben will talk about that shortly. Next slide, please. Just to give you all a little bit more information on the recent efforts, this picture of the bottom is what collaboration looks like, is actually getting out on the ground with everybody and working together and seeing. So we really do want your input, and we want to work with the property owners and the county and the community in Lake County to conserve the hitch. There's been a lot of movement and a lot of momentum this past 2 years. So in August, our tribal partners came to us and requested a government-to-government consultation between the department and the sovereign governments, the sovereign tribal governments in Lake County. That resulted in the formation of a multi-agency task force, which originally just started off as me and our district biologist, Ben, who's here in the room, and the tribal leadership. This task force has since expanded to include federal, state, and local agencies, and we have representatives. I believe the last count was over 20 agencies, not including the tribal governments. And really, we're ushering in a new era of communication and collaboration, getting us out of our silos and helping us to work together. That collaboration came out of an emergency summit that we held last December. We are planning a follow-up summit to get our agency leadership and tribal leadership together once again to discuss next steps and how do we secure resources to keep this conservation effort going. This year, we're continuing our monitoring and supporting monitoring that the tribes are doing, data sharing, and really working together to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts. This is coordination and communication. We're reviving projects. Marina had mentioned the Middle Creek flood protection and ecosystem restoration project, and several other projects that we're working with the county and other agencies to keep going forward. And then new efforts, this outreach is part of that. You know, we really don't want to be in our silos anymore. We want to work with you all. And we've had multiple outreach events. Robinson Rancheria invited us to Shagome Days, which we attended, and Big Valley Rancheria invited us to participate in the Tule Boat Festival, which are great opportunities to come out and meet the community. And we want to come out again frequently to meet with you all. I also do want to mention State Water Resources Control Board is having a public in-person meeting in this room on October 19th at 4:30. And then October 24th, there's a virtual meeting, and that's to discuss their emergency regulation. So just keep an eye out for these outreach events. We do want to engage the community. And then we are now entering like a new phase of barrier removal, not only for big infrastructure projects, but also for debris and smaller barriers. And this is where we can really use your help. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Ben Huffer, who will go into the details.
Yeah, I'm Ben Huffer. I'm an environmental scientist with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I cover the CEQA, CISA, and LSA programs in Lake County. So just going to quickly go over our recent CCC barrier reduction project. So for this project, county, state, and tribal entities work together to identify various tributaries to Clear Lake that were impacted by various fish passage barriers. And we worked on removing these barriers with the help of the CCCs, and that was a collaborative effort with various agencies and the county, state park, CDFW. That was a big effort. Next slide. So as Felipe mentioned, out of the Clear Lake Hitch Task Force, the idea came up to potentially use the California Conservation Corps to address some of these fish passage barriers. So as I said, state, local, and tribal entities identified the various tributaries that we thought were most important to the Hitch this year. And the CCCs are experts in this kind of minimal vegetation and clearing activities. So with their help, we were able to get a lot of work done in some really important areas for the Clear Lake Hitch this year. So that was the goal of that project. Next slide. So the goal of the project was to increase the historic habitat of the Clear Lake Hitch migration corridors. The Hitch will go up the tributaries, spawn and rear there, and then make their way back to Clear Lake. But in low water years, there's been a lot of fish strandings. Even in high water years, good rain years, there's still a lot of fish strandings. So it was clear that a lot of this debris and barriers needed to be removed from the tributaries. The goal was not to address flooding hazards, but debris specific that would impact Clear Lake Hitch, which often would coincide with flooding issues. If the creeks flood, the fish will get pushed out of the creek. So a lot of times they kind of overlap. Yeah, the goal is just to ensure the fish passage in these tributaries. And as you can see in this picture, there's a lot of trash and a lot of woody debris buildup that we were able to get out of the creeks. Next slide. As I mentioned, the locations were identified by CDFW fisheries biologists, tribal biologists, and Lake County resource specialists. The county was able to send out ROEs, and we were able to access various parcels to get in there and do the work. So special thanks to all the property owners that responded to the ROEs and the property owners in the field that gave us access to the properties. I think everyone agrees a lot of really good work got done during this project. So the crew implemented intense vegetation and debris removal to improve the Clear Lake Hitch passage and access to their historic spawning and migration grounds. Next slide. So we have a few pictures of the before and after of the areas the C's worked on. So this first one is Adobe Creek at Finley Road. The picture on the left is before. The picture's taken in almost the same location. And as you can tell, that left picture, there's just a wall of vegetation. And on the right is kind of the finished product after it's been cleared. And there was just a lot of dense vegetation and woody debris built up on the ground. And it was all taken out. Well, not all of it. Most of it was taken out and chipped at this location. Thanks to Jen and the county for coordinating, getting a chipper for this spot because there was just a lot of wood. The truck actually had so much wood chipped into it that the hydraulic lift didn't work. They had to shovel it out before they could dump it. That's how much was there. Next slide. This is McGaw Slough at Finley Road. That left picture's obviously before another dense wall of vegetation. You're looking down at the vegetation here on the left and the bridge is on the other side. Obviously you can't even see it. And then the right picture there is the cleared channel, the end result of the work there that the CCCs did. Next slide. This is Adobe Creek at Bell Hill Road. There's large culverts there that were overgrown with thick, dense willows. So on the left there, you can barely see the actual culvert. You can see how that would be a barrier to the hitch, making it past this culvert system. And on the right, you can see the work the C's did. And it's important to note that all this work was done with hand tools. There was no heavy equipment. It was all just the 7-man CCC crew and some additional help from the county and state. Next project. Next slide. This is Coal Creek. Coal Creek wasn't originally slated to be worked on, but it kind of just happened that we were able to work on it. The left side slide there is a huge buildup of debris. You can see that willow that had one arm of the trunk growing kind of horizontally to the creek, and there was just a massive buildup of woody debris behind it. And this was an area that we know Hitch were exiting the creek and getting stranded in the drainage ditches and adjacent farm. And the right side there, you can see how much clear, that's the same section, the same tree there on the right. So you can see how well the fish passage was improved in that section. So that was the barrier removal project. It was a collaboration with multiple agencies. So special thanks to our tribal partners, the county, the state, and especially the residents of Clear Lake along the creeks that participated and gave us authorization to work in these areas. Next slide. So what's next and how to help? Let's see. The future phases. So there's still a few areas left over in that CCC project that we'd like to get back to. It's possible we'll have additional CCC crews come up. We also want to work with property owners in Upper Lake, Scotts Creek to improve Clover, Middle, and Scotts Creek. These are also areas that have been identified that need some work for the hitch. We want to remind everyone that without the consent of the property owners, we can't get the work done that we need to do. So we can only implement the work with willing landowners. So please reach out and work with us as best you can. And like Felipe said, we really want to empower property owners to work on their own streams, on their own properties, and do the work they need to do to keep the creeks clean for the hitch and for their own private benefit. So That's kind of why I'm here, to kind of talk you through the process of how you can do the work in these creeks, and remain in compliance and, do it the right way. So with that, we'll kind of get into the permitting phase here. So a lot of what I do is the lake and stream bed alteration agreements, the LSA and SAA. Fish and Game Code, section 1602 requires any person, state, or local government, agency, or public utility to notice CDFW prior to beginning any activity that may do one or more of the following things. I don't need to read it to you, but CDFW basically requires a lake and stream bed alteration agreement for any project activity that may substantially adversely affect fish and wildlife resources. If you're planning on doing a project or you're thinking about doing a project, please reach out to me. I'm happy to go over the project with you, and figure out if you'll need a permit, or if there's a way that we can tweak your project so that you don't need to do this LSA. And if it gets to this point, I'm happy to do a site visit, and help you prepare for this permitting process, because it can be confusing, but early consultation will make the process a lot easier. So the main permit that property owners will be notifying for will be this lake and stream bed alteration agreement. And like I said, if you ever have any questions, feel free to email or give me a call, and I'll work with you to get through this process. Next slide. So when are lake and stream bed alteration agreements necessary? So using any equipment that alters the creek bed, bank, or channel. So this is digging, dredging, or adding material. So if you're using any heavy equipment in the channels, it's likely we would recommend notifying for that kind of work. Installing piers, docks, seawalls, and boat ramps. That's a lot of the notifications we receive for Clear Lake. And additionally, installation of in-channel culverts, bridges, low water crossings, retaining walls. If you're putting in any water diversion pumps or water diversion systems, that likely will need a permit as well. And then removing vegetation. If you're taking out a big tree with large root structure along the creek, that'll likely impact the bed, bank, or channel of the creek, so that may require a permit as well. If you don't know, if you have any questions, please reach out and we can work together to figure out if you need one or not. Next slide. So when permits are not needed from CDFW, cutting, trimming, overgrown vegetation that reaches into the creek channel, any hand tools, trimmers, chainsaws, you're welcome to get into your creek, clear the vegetation. We just ask that you take the vegetation out. Don't leave it in an area where it'll re-enter the creeks. You can remove dead down vegetation from the creek bed. You just can't use a backhoe to take it out, and then any flood related debris or garbage, you're also free to take out. And like I said, please don't throw any vegetation or trash into the creek, because it'll just get washed out into the watershed. But again, if you have any questions, if you don't know, feel free to reach out to me. We have a Q&A session coming up at the end here. So if you have any questions or specific questions about a project, let me know and I can go over it with you. But we do want property owners to get into their creeks and clear it out as best they can on their own time and specific to their property. So, we're not here to prevent you from doing that. We want to work with you to help you do that. So like I said, feel free to reach out anytime and I'm happy to help. Yes, so how to notify for an LSA or SSA. The first step will be registering with our online EPIMS permitting system. So once you register, you'll fill out various prompts, and at that point we can start working on issuing you the associated agreement. Like I said, early consultation with CDFW is recommended. A lot of times projects will have multiple activities. We want to make sure that you're detailing each activity. And it's helpful if you can provide a very detailed project description. So instead of just saying culvert installation, you say it's going to be a 24-foot culvert, 18-inch diameter. There's going to be however many cubic yards of backfill placed at the site. So as much detail as you can provide will make the notification process go much faster. Next slide. So important considerations when you're thinking about your project and you're getting ready to do your permit. There's the Clear Lake Hitch work window. So for tributaries, if you have property along the creek, the work window will be July 1st through December 31st, and projects in Clear Lake will be October 15th through December 31st. So that's the Clear Lake Hitch work window. It's intended to protect the hitch, so project-related activities won't result in take. If project activities may result in take of threatened, endangered, or candidate species, so in Lake County, we're mostly talking about the Clear Lake Hitch here. A separate CISA permit may be required. That's the incidental take permit. So keep in mind, if you're working inside the Clear Lake Hitch work window, you won't need to go for this CISA permit. And the fees vary by project. You can just Google the fee schedule, LSA fee schedule. It should come up on Google. But I can send you more information on that as well. But yeah, the fees will vary by project. Next slide. A few more things to consider is the nesting bird season. There's several nesting birds in Lake County that can be impacted by project activities. So February 1st to August 31st is a typical nesting season. Any projects happening in that time may require a focus survey for nests and birds in the area. But again, if you're working outside that nesting bird season, you won't need to get a designated biologist for your project. If you're using any herbicides, you may not need an agreement for that, but we recommend using wildlife and aquatic safe products, and if possible, hiring a licensed applicator. And then hazardous materials, any dirt, cement, petroleum products, trash. We don't want that ending up in the creek or Clear Lake. So all those materials need to be stored where they cannot enter any creeks or tributaries or the lake itself throughout your project activities. Next slide. If there's an emergency, an immediate threat to life or property, you can submit an emergency notification. So if the creek is rapidly eroding near your property and you could lose any livestock or it could impact your house, you can do emergency work to protect your life and property. So this includes temporary fixes to failing levees, roads, retaining walls, culverts. And in that instance, you can do what you need to do to protect your property. You can use the heavy equipment. You'll just have to notify that you've done the work within 14 days of the activity. These notifications still need to be reviewed by CDFW. But if you need to do it, please do. We don't want to hold up the process for you, protecting your property. I think that's it on the permits. I think we're here till 7. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or if there's any in the room,
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for your guys' presentation. So we have a little over 30 minutes. Well, how this is going to work, we have our contact information here. Jordan should be putting in the chat as well. We are more than happy to send the slideshow out to folks. Go ahead and send Jordan Beaton a personal message with your email, or just put it in the Zoom chat. She'll collect those emails and we can send out the slideshow. We're also going to post again the recording and the slides on the Water Resources website. So we'll take notification, and those folks that are here too, if you want this email to you, go ahead and give Mitchell your email. We can get this to you. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for Q&A just to make sure this runs as smoothly as possible with very few hiccups. I'm going to open it up to members of the public first. Please feel free to share your name if you reside in any specific area, especially as we're looking at priority areas that we're going to be addressing. Please feel free to share that as well if you feel comfortable. And then we'll go ahead and look at the Zoom room. I'm going to stop sharing so folks can see us. And then I know that we've gotten a few questions in the chat, so I'll lean on Jordan to help facilitate the Zoom room. So with that being said, let's go ahead and open it up to our friends in the board chambers first. If there's any questions, please feel free to answer those. And then folks in the Zoom room, if you do have a question, go ahead and raise your hand if you're available, put it in the chat, and we'll call on you when appropriate. Go ahead, Sarah. Yeah, I think this mic, let's make sure that this mic works, because I do want to make sure folks on the Zoom can hear. One second, Chris, we're going to have Sarah ask the first question, and then we'll go to the Zoom room after we get questions here.
Hey, it's just a quick question about, in your slide, you said there were something like 38 right of entries that were handed or given out to folks in the Big Valley area. I think maybe Adobe and Coal Creeks, or Adobe and Manning, and 18 of them.
I think it was McGaw
and Adobe.
And Adobe, yeah.
And then, I'm sorry. Bell Hill, maybe.
All of the areas for 30.
Okay, so of the, so 18 back, and so what about the other 20? You know, what does that mean in terms of, because obviously with some sort of identification of those properties that, you know, things needed to happen, or, you know, wanted to try to get in there to help those folks out. So what does that mean in terms of those other 20?
I can, yeah.
I can take a first back.
Yeah, go ahead.
And yeah, so we will have another phase with the CCCs, and we do want property owners to return those ROEs. Again, we can't do the work without permission to enter. So that's why those ROEs are important. And I believe the county has some other efforts that they'd like to speak about.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so we're diligently tracking. We have Mitchell here, who was the one actually sending out the ROE. So we have a tracker of who got back to us, who else we need to send to. So we're planning on sending the same ROE out to those folks that didn't get back to us, in hopes that we can add them on to the next phase. And then just an additional cover letter providing further clarification. With a lot of the outreach that it's been done, it's been great because people are actually seeing the work that's being done. And we were hoping that with folks actually seeing the work, they'd get excited. I know we also talked with our friends at CDFW and just having some blank ROE. So when they're out there doing the work, ultimately that comes from the county. So, you know, we shared with them that folks can fill out the ROEs on hand if they see CDFW out there, if their parcel falls in that project area, and then we can meet them out there. We can do the final sign off, and it's a pretty quick and easy process once we get the final signature from the county's end as well. So again, additional effort of resending out the ROEs to those folks that didn't get to us the first round, and then working with CDFW and doing more outreach. So
Do you think any of it rises to a level of enforcement needed to, you know, because if these have been identified as, you know, blocking passage in some way, and it's probably just debris, right? We're not really talking about hard
Correct.
structures or infrastructures. It's more what the CCCs, the 3Cs can do.
correct.
Is that what they're called? The 3Cs
Yeah.
can do when they're out there. So yeah, just, it's like some of them maybe won't ever sign it, and just kind of wondering what that means.
Yeah, that's a good point, Sarah. So, and that, you know, partially why the conversation happened at the board level, and now looping in code enforcement, county code enforcement, because if we're doing this work, we have the resources and we have that collaboration effort. It's, work that needs to be done. And we acknowledge that we don't have the capacity or resources at the county to lead that on our own. So if we do get folks that are very much hesitant and they completely refuse, I don't see CDFW taking that on right now. I see that that's something that if we do develop, when we do develop the ordinance and we do have those conversations with code enforcement, maybe that's the first area that we address, right? We have, for example, 6 parcel owners that, refuse to sign. Maybe that's an avenue that we could take. So I can't say for certain, but that's a really good point that you bring up as we're working on these code ordinances as it relates to vegetation and debris that is in the lake that's prohibiting the spawning of the hitch.
Passage. Yeah, I'm really excited about that effort and also just all of this barrier removal work. I think it's awesome. One other quick question I had was that Ben, you mentioned that that the property owners, if they want to, I mean, I know that you're not saying, oh, go use whatever herbicide you want, because you said it needs to be aquatic safe and whatnot. But I'm also kind of wondering, would the water boards get involved in that anyway? Because if you're doing herbicide application in or around water, and it just sounds like something that's maybe not so clear cut.
Yeah, I haven't done much permits that involve the herbicide, so I would probably put the water board to this.
So then they might they would weigh it. So if somebody submits a permit that says this is one of the ways that we're going to do things, does that go to water boards for review, or just your environmental scientists and you guys do an evaluation of it? Just curious.
I would let Dylan would have a better idea on that, but I was going to mention for the ROEs, that was to get access into the creek. So once we were in the creek, we're able to clear stretches. It's not.
The people on Zoom can't hear what's talked about right now. Just FYI. If someone's speaking, you can't hear them. Thank you.
I was gonna ask Dylan if he could talk about the herbicide question. But I was just telling Sarah about the ROEs. They gave us access to the creek. So if we had to remove debris, we could go through those properties. We were able to clear large sections of the creek. And once we were in the creek, we could just work through the navigable waterway and clear the creek. We weren't skipping sections that we didn't have ROEs for.
Okay.
But I don't know if Dylan or Jen could weigh in on the use of herbicides.
Yeah, I can jump in on the herbicide question. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, so just wanted to touch on the herbicide question. So we typically loop in the water boards when we do have projects of that nature, just to kind of collaborate as fellow state agencies. We don't have a mandatory reporting requirement. It's mostly just related to that good collaboration effort. So there are cases, when we have more extensive herbicide projects where that collaboration is helpful and needed. Hope that
Okay, thank you.
Great, okay. Anyone right now in the board chambers? If not, we're gonna go to the Zoom room and then we'll come back. Thank you, Sarah. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Angela. I see your hand up right now. If there's anything you need to add.
I was, yeah, but I wasn't the first one with a hand up. I think Julia had her hand up first. I don't know if you wanted to go to public.
Go ahead, Julia. And you're muted. I'm gonna ask to unmute you.
Thank you very much. And thank you so very much for putting on this Zoom experience and meeting for the public in Lake County. It's so needed and such rich and good information for a quality of life here in Lake County that I think we all want, deserve, and expect. My question lies around the infamous shedding of some of the water banks of the levee system here in Upper Lake, where I believe Mr. De Leon obtained a permit or a grant to redo that area for next year. And I'm wondering how, since we're sitting in the midst of an El Nino year, how that's going to protect us this year and what the plan is for emergency evacuation in Upper Lake in case in this El Nino year, these unstable levees either overflow or have a breach of some sort. Thank you.
You're fine. So Julia, that is something that, if you're talking about the levee system, is that correct?
Well, I'm talking about two things. The first thing I'm talking about is the grant that was received for the sloughing that took place near the Elk Mountain Road Bridge, that over 50 feet there. And then the second question is, in an emergency situation of flooding, which is imminent in levees and El Nino years, and we saw a lot of it last year in Sacramento Valley, what is the emergency evacuation plans for the Upper Lake area if in fact a levee should overflow or breach in some way and we have flooding, since we are looking at an El Nino year this year?
Yeah, so Julia, I'll connect with you. That's not tied directly to the stream clearing and vegetation clearing that's going on right now. I know we've had some brief discussions in our Upper Lake feasibility study that is taking place, but I am going to pass it over to Angela because she has a grant specifically for the Clover Creek Restoration Project. I don't know if that's why you hopped on, Angela, but it does tie into what you were talking about, at least one point that you were talking about, Julia. So I'm going to pass it over to Angela to talk a little bit about the Clover Creek project that we highlighted.
Yeah, thanks, Marina. Thanks for that question, Julia. So we did get a mitigation grant from Caltrans to restore a section of Clover Creek in the diversion channel, which is the area between Elk Mountain Road Bridge and basically the confluence of that Clover Creek man-made channel and Middle Creek. It's a little over a mile, I believe, right there. The goal of that project, it's called actually the Clover Creek Hitch Restoration Project, and it's paid for through Caltrans funds to offset their impact from a Blue Lakes shoulder widening project. The goal of that project is to improve habitat for the hitch while stabilizing that channel. So the goal of that project is not for flood reduction. It just happens to be in an area that has flood protection levees. And the main part of that project, the first part of that project is sediment removal. So unfortunately, because sediment removal could have potential for high impact to, you know, the ecosystem there, and there could be cultural significant resources in that sediment, it's the part of the project that takes the longest to plan out. And that is where we are now. We're actually, you know, putting together the final agreement for how we're going to tackle that sediment removal. There is large trees, large shrubs in that area that both the Caltrans team, CDFW team, Army Corps team, and the county team all agreed need to be pulled out. And we're going to restore that area with beneficial shrubs and herbs and plants that'll benefit that area as a hitch habitat in the little channel, but also won't grow big enough to cause integrity loss to the levee channel, to the levees there. So unfortunately, this project won't take place this year. It has to be done when there's no water in the channel, and the goal is to restore it for hitch habitat, not flood protection, unfortunately. So sorry about that. But if anybody has more questions about that project, you can contact me at Water Resources. It is all the activities in that project do fall within the operation manual guidance from Army Corps for maintaining those levees. So everything that we're doing, that project has the unique benefit of both providing hitch habitat and also providing integrity for the levees there for flood protection. It's just unfortunate that sediment removal part takes longest, and that's the part we have to do first before we go in and do restorative plantings.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela. That makes complete sense. And I know that, you know, nobody did any kind of cultural analysis before they put in the levee system. So there's a lot of work to be done there, no doubt about it. But if you could address, you know, one of my biggest concerns is an evacuation plan for the flooding, if flooding should take place in our area, which in my opinion, it ties in with creek debris removal, because that's also causing flooding. If we're going to be getting the record rainfall that's being anticipated by those scientists that do that kind of work. And so I would love to hear some kind of emergency plan in regards to that?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking my questions.
Thank you, Julia. And that's a great question. And that's something that we would definitely need to get OES, our Lake County Office of Emergency Services, involved in terms of evacuation plan. Unfortunately, that wouldn't fall under the jurisdiction of my department when it comes to evacuating for a local emergency. So definitely I'll follow up with Leah Sotlett, our emergency operation manager, and we can do some sort of follow-up, and whether that be outreach within the Upper Lake community, since that is the designated Upper Lake or the levee system. Angela, did you have your hand up? Was that related to that question or comment?
No, it's addressed from a comment from earlier. So I can, if you're done with that, I'll just tag on for a previous.
Yeah, go ahead, tag on.
Okay. It was about the use of herbicides and other things. So we have our local ordinance, chapter 29 is our stormwater ordinance, and it actually prohibits any discharges of anything in waterways. So just know that there's local regulations too for using herbicides, also trash. So you actually could get, if you have trash that is kind of in the waterway or could fall in the waterway and cause pollution or an impact, a stormwater inspector from the code enforcement or planning department could come out and cite you and give you a notice to abate that. Same thing if there's herbicide use and there's water there, and any chance of any of that herbicide use can get into that waterway, that's a violation, a Clean Water Act violation, and also our code 29, and you could get a citation for that too. And then anybody that's applying herbicides probably have to get approval through the Department of Ag. I know we do, and all of our applicators that go through us. So there might be some local ordinances requirements. It's always good to check with the local ag department for any of that if you wanted to do some chemical controls of vegetation.
Great. Thank you, Angela. There is a comment that before I pass it over to John, and I want to make sure I just follow up from Janine in the Zoom chat, stating, trying to parse the response to Sarah's question, did I hear that the process of finalizing relevant ordinances? So Janine, yes, this is in relation to working with the code enforcement community development department. My department and CDD are working closely. We're in the early stages of looking at our current ordinance and then similar ordinances as it relates to vegetation buildup on private property in these stream channels. And we will be bringing any sort of draft ordinance to the Board of Supervisors. I will definitely let this group know, especially Felipe and your team, before we bring that before the Board of Supervisors for review and consideration and making sort of any changes to that. So we're in the early stages of that. We're having conversations, definitely going to be looping in Sarah Ryan to that conversation as well. I hope that provided clarification. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to John Murphy with the State Water Board.
Sure. I guess in fear of potentially complicating the herbicide question a little more, not so much a question, just a comment. But I think what Angela was saying and my CDFW colleagues were saying, that's right. If any sort of application happens that impacts water resources, we would probably want to be notified. It'd probably be subject to NPDES permitting point source discharges. There is a general order with the Water Board that covers certain herbicides and pesticides, but it's specific to certain herbicides, pesticides, that are approved for use in the state of California. So potentially to complicate that even more, there is also a Water Board permit that might be needed for any sort of herbicide applications, but I can dig a little deeper with the Regional Water Board on that question as well. I think that's all. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, John. So I did promise you all that I would do a 15-minute time check, and I am early because I'm always on time. That's a joke. But I'm going to go ahead and do that time check now. Thanks for laughing, friends. If you have any questions in the Zoom room, go ahead and raise your hand. But just to be safe, please feel free to put it in the chat and we will get to it. I see we already have one. I'm going to pass it over to our friends in the chambers. Are there any questions right off the bat? Going once, going right. Yep, go ahead. Feel free to please come up to the mic so we can all hear you.
John Laboito from Upper Lake. I don't know if this is actually a question, but you know, there's a lot of people who would probably, they'd be just fine to get their creek cleaned out, you know, or maybe even do it themselves if they could. But there are certainly older people on fixed income, whatever. I'm thinking about in town Upper Lake. I mean, no matter how much they would like to do this, They just can't. And I think you should be real cautious about this code enforcement approach. There's got to be some option for them. Anyway, I guess while I'm up here, the other thing, since I did sign and return my ROE, it might be a little bit too much legalese in there for some people. I mean, I've been through programs like this before. It didn't intimidate me, but maybe not for other people, it might. And the last story I want to tell is when the county was negotiating with landowners in the Robinson Slough restoration, they were buying out people's homes down in the restoration area. Had a man working for the county. I don't know his name, but he was kind of this old cowboy, you know, and he was trusted by all the people around there. And he had a very nice manner in talking to people. And he persuaded just about everybody in the reclamation that where they need to buy out their house. He persuaded just about everybody to go along. So there's an example. I don't know if it helps.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. I do appreciate your points, especially as it relates to just the older population as we're working through the CDD code. You know, we want to be mindful, especially with the whole, you know, equitable component of it. We don't want to intimidate anyone by any means. And then same with the legal aspect of it. We get that it can be intimidating. You get a document that has legal language in there, and it can definitely deter people. So hoping that they see us out there and we have these conversations and outreach events of this nature will help with that. So definitely appreciate your input. Eduardo, we have you on the Zoom room. I see your hand raised. Please go ahead and share what you have to share with the group.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, so just want to say thank you for having this this meeting. A lot of useful information, and I just want to say that I have noticed some tributaries here in Clear Lake being cleaned. I know that's probably jurisdiction of the city of Clear Lake, but it looks a lot nicer. You can see how much it's going to help with flooding if we are going to be getting a lot of rain. So I just wanted to just say thank you for bringing attention to this issue. I had a question for Ben. There with the CDFW about the work window for tributaries. On the slide, it said July 1st through December 31st. And obviously, I'm very familiar with the work window variance or the work window for Clear Lake, which is October 15th through December 31st. So is the reason for the slightly larger work window in tributaries due to the fact that during those months usually there isn't any water or any fish in those in the tributaries at that time?
Oh, Ben, do you mind coming up to the chat? Thank you, Mike.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Also, would the how would that work for example for canals? There's some canals like in the Oaks. There's some canals up in Lakeport. So how does that include that, or is strictly just tributaries?
I think it's more focused on the tributaries. We could do like a specific review of your project if you have a project in one of those locations. But generally, I think projects in the Keys, and I'm assuming, I don't think I've done any in the Lakeport canals, but I think we would consider that part of actual Clear Lake, and it would have the October 15th to December 31st work window.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, thank you for the work that you guys do and for working with us in getting these agreements going. And thank you for everyone that showed up today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Everardo.
Yep.
All right. Any other friends in the board chambers? No? Any friends in the Zoom room? No. All right. Do any friends from CDFW want to share any parting thoughts with us? I know we have Jen Garcia, who has been a big lead in terms of CDFW. She's actually been out in the creeks as well, along with a lot of our friends from CDFW, getting rid of some of this vegetation. So I wanted to give you, Jen, the opportunity to share any parting thoughts or any final thoughts with the group.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for just being a part of this outreach. I think we need a lot more outreach. So we're hoping to be more and more a part of the community. I just wanted to put the reminder out that we were really lucky and fortunate to be able to work with the CCCs this year. They were able to actually accommodate us and our need for removal of some really critical veg in our kind of migratory and spawning habitat areas and these tributaries. But I do want to remind folks that the seas, even if you return these ROEs, which we need because we want to get out there, we're never going to be able to do everything. So we're really, really relying on our property owners to be able to go out there and do some work themselves, and actually get some of that vegetation and that debris out of the creek channels, that garbage. All of those things will not only help for habitat, which of course is our main goal, but it does of course assist with flooding issues and just water quality health in general. So in any way that we can help, please let us know. If we're not able to get to, as they say, your neck of the woods or your reach of the creek with our CCC crews in the next couple of months, we would have loved to, and maybe we can revisit and return next year. But for all of those areas where we can, we're gonna, as they say, go in and get it done as quickly as we can and remove as much of that dense vegetation and debris as we can. But please know that we're really supportive of our landowners to get out there and do some of this for themselves, because it's beneficial for habitat and for our wildlife and for fisheries, but it's also beneficial for your property, and it's actually better for our habitat in general, just for movement and flow and again water quality. So please let us know where we can help you, where we can assist. I very much appreciate the gentleman that said there's a lot of capacity issues just for people being able to actually get in there and do that work themselves. It's tedious work. I don't think I've ever worked that hard in my life in the 1 week I was out there with the Seas crew. Never seen so much vegetation pulled out of a creek before. So it is intimidating, but we want to work together. We're working with the county, trying to get more money on the ground for everybody, not just for levees and things of that nature, but in general across the landscape. So the more we can work together, the more we're going to accomplish. And we really appreciate everybody's time and coordination on this. So thank you for having us tonight.
Great. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And we do have Ron here if you want to share anything.
Yes, Ron Montez, Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians, Tribal Historic Preservation Officer and Elder. This whole opportunity for private landowners to have some help clean up these waterways that go through their properties is a very important issue. We've experiencing some of that up in the Cobb area, and it has brought a lot of joy to my heart because these areas, we haven't been able to go back to these Aboriginal properties for hundreds of years. And so to be back in there on these properties again brings my heart a lot of joy. And I remember the beginnings of all of this and the fight that we had for somebody to hear us about the Hitch. Will somebody listen? And so we're so thankful, I'm speaking for me and my tribe, for those that have heard the call and stepped up to take that responsibility to bring some answers to this need that has been here on our hearts for many, many years. And I just want to, again, remind everyone that this is a large work. It has taken many years to get to this place that it's in now. A lot of mismanagement, a lot of arguing and debating. At the same time, the Hitch are dying and not coming back. And part of our culture is dying with it. So I applaud all of you who have stood up and heard that call and are shouldering with these other agencies for the first time. It's like you're making history. And so I want to commend you in that, in the effort that you're putting on. And I want to encourage all those who can benefit from this to really get in there and fill out these paperwork so that you can have these things done. Because if you don't do that, that still is a problem for our Hitch to get up where they need to go. And our water is still drying up. And we are stranding babies up and down the creeks where the water is just pooling up and there's no continuous flow back to the lake. And so there's still more answers that need to be brought out and sought after and have answered. But to this point, I want to commend you. The county, Lakeport, County of Lake, the Water Board and the Fish and Wildlife and all of you partnering with us all. And I'm looking forward to going out. When the Hitch first came back, I stood on that roadway there where the culverts were underneath, and I sang a song to those fish because I hadn't seen them for so long. And I welcomed them back into our, back to us again, coming back home. And that meant so much to me. And it has sparked something that has been caught and moved and going forward. And I want to just acknowledge that my eyes are still watching you. My heart is still praying for you and caring that we continue this on, and that this door and this window that's open, we take full advantage of it, because we don't know how long that window will be open. But we want to all roll our sleeves up and get in there and do the best that we can for our Hitch and also for each one of our agencies, that we now know that we can stand together and accomplish a lot more. And so I thank you. I thank you guys for all the hours you put in, and all those of you who are on the Zoom, I thank you for all the help and the support that you guys have brought. Oh.
Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you. I think that's a beautiful note to end on. I truly do appreciate everyone for taking the time. I know we're all busy bees, and there's a lot going on. So I do appreciate the words, the input. We all need you guys. I think that's the biggest takeaway that we can get, is we all need to work together, and we've been able to do that. And it's really exciting to see what we've been able to accomplish, but I think we can all acknowledge we still have a long way to go. So this is not the last town hall. You guys will continue to hear from us. We continue to need to work alongside you all. And I do want to appreciate, just again, give my kudos and appreciation to our friends at the state, our friends at our tribal communities, for really taking things away. I do know we have, I don't know, Chris.
Stop.
Oh.
Calm down.
Is that? Okay. Wouldn't be the first time on a Zoom. So with that, we do have our business cards here with Lake County up front. Please feel free to take one. Jordan did include our contact information as well. We'll go ahead and share the slideshow with everyone available. So if you want us to send it to you directly to your email, just give us your email and we'll make sure that we get that to you. Again, this recording, give us about a week or so to get this recording on the Lake County Water Resources website. We'll also make sure that we make make a post on Facebook and we can share it with folks to direct them to it. And Lake County, we do have our water resources YouTube site. So this will be placed on the YouTube site. Check out all of our fun videos there. But with that being said, it is 6:58. I do want to be mindful of people's time because I know my tummy's growling. So we'll go ahead and adjourn session informally. But again, thank you all so much for your time. Thank you, CDFW, for driving down here. And I hope everyone has a good night and get home safely. So thank you. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everyone on Zoom.